And we're back at Indo-Pacific Sea Farms today, and we're going to do a demonstration of how to make rock for your Nano Lagoon. This is the dry man-made rock that will be used to eventually become live rock in the aquarium. Got an interesting email from a viewer this weekend, and he said, hey, can you show us how you make this Aragocrete rock? And I thought, okay, that's a good idea. We'll show you how to do that. So what we're doing now is showing some of the layout here at Indo-Pacific, and basically we have built what is essentially a pretty big sandbox. It's probably about 10 feet by 8 feet or so, and filled that up with a crushed coral sand. You can see the grain size there, and on top we've got some examples of the rock we made. Now at home, we of course buy this by the truckload, 10-15 tons at a time, because we do a lot of this. But at home you would go into a Home Depot or a Lowe's or someplace like that and look for some crushed coral. Here's an example of 3/4 inch coral. You see the grade size, pretty big. It's like aggregate. It's sometimes called 3/4 minus. And here's another example of coral sand, and it's just a fairly fine sand. And those are sold in 0.5 cubic foot bags, pretty cheap. And then you also want to pick up a bag of Portland cement, an 80-pound bag. They're pretty cheap, around 10 bucks or so. So those are the basic components. These bags of coral are really cheap, just a few bucks. The materials are cheap, and as far as tools, you need this is a piece of rebar, it's just or a screwdriver, and I had my my mason's pointing tool. This is used for pointing up. It's used for smoothing mortar between rows of brick and block. And just some little shaping tools like that. You need a little trowel, or a gardener's trowel, or a mason's proper mason's trowel to sort of move the mud, which is what we call the mixture, around. Now you want to mix it in a wheelbarrow. You're going to need a decent shovel, maybe a smaller shovel. If you get serious, you do what we did, which is to buy a mixer, but my recommendation is hold off on that, and definitely don't quit your day job yet. Even though this is simple to make, it's more of a challenge to sell. And somebody once pointed out, hey, you don't make money making rock, you make money selling rock. Keep that in mind. You start with an understanding of the mixture. When you make concrete, the basic rule of thumb is 1, 2, 3. That's the formula. 1 part cement, 2 parts sand, 3 parts aggregate. So this would be your sand, this would be your aggregate, and cement, of course, comes in the sack. It's a gray powder. Once again, 1 part cement, 2 parts sand, 3 parts aggregate. So you determine how much you're going to make. You can use a 5-gallon bucket to measure the stuff out, or some smaller measuring unit such as a quart, and put all your dry materials into your wheelbarrow and mix them up first. Mix them up dry. Get them real mixed up, real good, so all the cement is dispersed around the sand and the aggregate. Then you add a little bit of water from a hose, mix it up real good until you get kind of a stiff mix. A dry mix. You don't want standing water, and you don't want it running like syrup. You want it pretty stiff and dry. Then you take and use your trowel or your small shovel. Take a loaded trowel and drop it right onto the sand, and try to get sort of a round shape, or here's an example of a kind of a branchy shape. And see how that's kind of crumbly? That means it was a dry mix, not too much water. You can then use your screwdriver or your point-up tool to add features, to put holes in it, shape it a little bit. Here's a nice piece. It's got a little bit of relief to it, and kind of a nice, interesting shape. You can see that. Now, if you want to make an arch, what you do is you get some newspaper and just roll it up like you're going to start a fire with it, and put it right on the sand, and then you just drop your mixture over that, and it will make an arch when it dries. And every piece will be different. That's good. Here's an example of a little sort of a piece with a hole in it. And in nature, these things arise when there are table acroporas. Here's a really good example. Table acroporas which have been rolled around in the surf zone over and over again and just eroded and eroded and eroded. And they really do end up looking like this. So keep in mind too that if you're going to do a 10-gallon tank, the pieces should be about as big as your fist to hand size, or the branchy ones will be kind of like that, no bigger. And you have basically made your mix. You've put out all your rocks on the sand, you let it dry overnight, and then the next day they're essentially good to go. However, you cannot use them directly in an aquarium. They have to be aged, either out in the backyard, just weathering for a while, or you put them in a trash container filled with seawater, get a bubbler going there, an air stone, and let it go for a while. And try throwing in a little aquarium water or a little aquarium sand, because what you want to see is you want to see some life growing on there. You'll be astonished, but you'll get some algae growing on those rocks, and that will tell you that it's done. But you should give it a month or so. More is better. So don't neglect that aging step. That leaches out whatever chemicals may have been in the Portland cement. The rest of the materials, of course, are coral. That means they're aragonite or calcite. And if you have any shells lying around, you can add those just to add sort of a little hint of authenticity to the mix. Now, we want to quickly point out and acknowledge that the term Aragocrete was coined by LeRoy Headlee at GARF, the Geothermal Aquaculture Research Foundation in Boise, Idaho. That's garf.org. LeRoy, his wife Sally Jo, and Eddie Postma, and the rest of the crew at GARF have done a terrific job. They actually pioneered this and have been doing it for many years. So we want to be very careful to acknowledge the work that the folks at GARF have done. We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. And it's a little known fact that LeRoy and I actually did some work together, more than 30 years ago. This was in the 70s on the Chambered Nautilus project in Palau. And if we have time, we'll do a little journal entry on that particular project. But bottom line, thanks to LeRoy, Sally Jo, Eddie, and the rest of the crew at GARF. And we hope all of you will take a turn at making some rock, get some cement, get some aggregate, coral aggregate, and give it a go. This is not rocket science, it's real simple. And what you are doing, of course, is removing pressure from wild reefs and just eliminating this silly process of shipping wild live rock halfway around the world while just about everything on those rocks dies in transit. That's a needless loss of life. We can all be doing this locally, and it will be a benefit to the aquarium trade and to the environment as well. Thanks for watching. Aloha.